Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and we have another great show for you today with our guest, John Lyons of Wilson Tennis, and John's going to be talking with us about Wilson's newest lines of rackets as well as racket information in general. So I just want to remind y'all, if you'd like to call in and chat with us or ask a question, our number is 714-583-6853. Again, it's 714-583-6853. And I hope you guys will call in today, and John's just got tons of information to share, so it should be a great hour of talking tennis. Before I bring him on, though, just a little bit of tennis news to remind you of. First of all, we are in the midst of college tennis season, so I hope all of my listeners are supporting your local college teams, going out and cheering them on, whether it's Division I, Division II, Division III, junior college, any of that. I hope you're out there and really supporting the players and supporting your local teams. They need us. They need our bodies in the seats at their matches, and they need to know that we're cheering for them and helping them be successful out there, because I promise you these kids are working their tails off, balancing their tennis training with their academic load. It's a lot to handle, and I know for a fact, because they tell me when I go to the matches how much they appreciate us being there. So please, please, please take a look at your local school's website, look up their men's and women's tennis teams, and check out the schedule, and take your kids, take your family, and go to a home match or two or five and support college tennis. Also wanted to let you guys know that my plans are firmed up for being at Indian Wells next month. If you're going to be there, please drop me a line and let me know so we can make arrangements to meet up, and we can have a cup of coffee or just sit and chat, or maybe even hit around a few balls. That would be really fun. So let me know. I will be there the first week, and we'll be there, I think, 6 days. So, again, you guys know how to reach me. You can reach me through ParentingAces.com. You can tweet at me, hit me up through the Facebook page. There's lots of ways to get a hold of me, and I look forward to hearing from you and meeting many of you out in the desert next month. Okay. Let me go to a quick commercial, and when we come back, I'm going to bring on John Lyons of Wilson Tennis, and we will jump right in.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and today's guest is John Lyons, who is the Product Director-Tennis Hardgoods. And yes, I will ask him to explain that for us in more detail, but he is with Wilson Tennis, and he's actually on the air with us from Germany. So, John, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm just looking forward to jumping in and talking rackets and tennis with you.
Great. Well, thanks, Lisa. Thank you for letting me join the conversation today.
Well, we're lucky to have you, and I've actually been doing some writing, and I've had a couple other guests on the show around choosing the proper equipment for our junior players and how important that is from an early age. And so the timing of this is actually perfect. And I know Wilson has a couple new lines of rackets out. You guys were generous enough to send me a couple of samples to play with, and my son and I have been putting them through their paces and loving them. We are undefeated in our mixed doubles league, so there you go. So tell us about the new, let's start with the Burn series, because that's the line that's targeting I think the younger players. Am I saying that right?
Well, it's certainly, we've made that racket line. It's actually a number of rackets, and we've made the Burn family of rackets in a variety of different weight and balance specs, primarily to suit different age players or different player needs. It doesn't mean that those rackets are only for kids, but certainly the style of play that we're trying to make the racket fit is a style of play that a lot of juniors are playing now. We've recently changed our product segmentation, how we organize our product line and how we develop product for players. And in the past, like a lot of the companies, we were talking mostly about the actual kind of attributes of the racket. Does the racket provide more power or more control or more spin? Or we're talking about the things the racket does. But we decided a while back that we really need to be more consumer and player-centric in our view of equipment. So we've really tried to change the whole way we think about the equipment that we develop. And we created a new segmentation in which we're really thinking about the player's style of play. And we created 3 segments, one for baseliners, one for what we're calling attackers, and one group of rackets for what we're calling all quarters. And the Burn racket is the first racket that's come out of that perspective of looking at the player needs and the player styles, specifically for the baseline players. And since a lot of junior players are playing predominantly baseline tennis, for better or worse, if you go to a junior tournament, you see a lot of the juniors are playing more from the backcourt. That means that they need certain things in a racket that a player who is an attacker who's taking more short balls might not need. So the Burn was developed, yes, with juniors in mind, absolutely, but in general developed for baseline players.
Gotcha. Well, I have to say, I've been playing with the Burn, and I love it. I'm getting a lot more power from the baseline, and I definitely fit that profile of baseliner. I'm terrified of the net, so I'm loving the racket, and the balance of the racket feels good in my hand. Being a 50-plus-year-old player,
see, it's not just for juniors at all.
Exactly. I'm very conscious of, how my arm feels, how my shoulder feels after I play.
Sure.
And so far, just zero issues with the Burn. So well done.
Well, and if you're playing playing most of your points from behind the baseline, you need a racket that's going to give you a little bit more power, because if you think about it, you're hitting the ball further. So when you're playing 3-4 feet behind the baseline, which you see players doing now more and more, you're going to need the racket to do a little bit more work. Players are also swinging, hard. They're not just playing defensive. They're not just counterpunchers, even though they're playing a little further back. Players are still taking a good swing at the ball, and that means you also need to be able to control the ball. So we also wanted a racket that would be powerful, still have comfort. So we built some comfort technology into it, and then we also put our spin effect system into the racket, and that gives you a little bit more ball rotation, a little bit more spin, and that helps you. You can use that spin to control the ball, get it to drop a little bit at the far end of the court, so you can keep some of your more powerful shots in the court. So it's actually even a little different head shape. Normally the Wilson rackets are pretty oval, and we went a little bit more round on the head shape on this, not dramatically, but if you hold it next to let's say a pro staff racket, you'll see that the head's a little different shape, and that's to give the players a little bit more room to brush up on the ball, again, to emphasize, spin, which is really sort of a big part of the game as well now that players are using both on the pro tour and in university, college play, and in the juniors, and even, club level players. Coaches are teaching spin more and emphasizing spin more and using spin to control the ball. So we built a racket that can give you plenty of power from behind the baseline, but you can use the spin to control it. And we also wanted to make sure that it was a comfortable racket. You're right, players are getting injured more, and we want to be sure we have rackets that are going to be easy for the players to use.
So there are more than one in the Byrne family, correct?
Mm-hmm. There are.
So can you talk about the different rackets in the family and what differentiates them?
So there are 4 main Byrne rackets. There's a Byrne 100S. S stands for spin. So the rackets that have an S designation from Wilson have a very unique string pattern in them. Normally a racket has more cross strings than main strings. The main strings are the up and downs. The cross strings are the side to side. So a normal string pattern on a racket would be 16 mains, 19 crosses, 18 mains, 20 crosses. This racket with the S designation has fewer cross strings than main strings. And when we use fewer cross strings and we space the strings out very evenly, that lets the main strings move when the ball contacts the strings. Strings move and they snap back into position, and that adds about 15%, depends on the player, of course, and how you swing, but about 15% more rotation on the ball. So the 100S is a spin effect pattern. It weighs right around 300 grams, but if the player is a little smaller and needs a little bit lighter racket, we make a 100LS, L standing for light, S for spin, and that racket is about 280 grams, so a lighter weight, easier to swing. And then the third version is a 100ULS, ultralight, and S for spin, and that racket's about 260 grams. So the idea is on the weights progressing up is that a junior player or a smaller player can start off with a quite lightweight racket that's easy for them to swing, and as they get a little bigger and can handle more weight in the racket, there's a benefit to more weight, the racket will be more stable, will give you more power. So let's say it's a junior player, they start off when they're younger with the ultralight, then they can move into the light, and then finally as they're getting bigger and can hold some of the full weight racket, they can move into the regular S 100S version. So the difference between those 3 rackets is primarily the weight. The balance point is a little bit different too. When we make the racket very light, we have to make it with a little bit more weight in the head. So the balance point shifts. The lighter rackets have to be a little bit more even balance, or even a little bit head heavy, so the player still has some mass to be able to hit the ball. So there's a weight progression on those 4, and then those 3, and then the 4th version is a 100, which is not in the spin effect pattern. It's a 16 by 19 string pattern. It's a more traditional string pattern. The advantage of the traditional string pattern is just really personal preference. Some players prefer that feel. Players can have a little bit more string breakage with the S version rackets because the strings are moving around more. But some players, they prefer the traditional feel, or they might be a little bit concerned about string breakage with the S versions.
Gotcha. And
so
I
really
will
it's about
say,
making a racket for each player.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned about the string breakage, because that was an issue my son was having, and he switched to one or the other. He was using one blade, and now he's making the change to a different blade, and that has solved his string breakage issue and is helping my pocketbook tremendously. So that's a good thing.
Sure. I know it can get expensive. One of the things that we learned when we first launched the S version of the spin effect rackets was we used 16 main, 15 cross patterns. So the first racket we launched was the Steam 99S and Steam 105S. And they definitely will maximize the string, but there was a little bit of that maximize the spin. But we did notice that some players were getting a little more string breakage, so actually we developed a second spin effect pattern, which has the burn rackets that we're talking about actually have 18 mains and 16 crosses, so we increased the number of mains and the number of crosses. It still has the fewer crosses than mains, so it still gives you the spin bump. And what we found is that, for the, let's say, the more serious players who are, playing longer points, loading the ball up with spin, playing tournament-level tennis, so a lot of them still want the spin, but the 18 by 16, which we're calling a precision spin pattern, mitigates some of that string breakage. And the other thing you can just do is you can just choose a slightly thicker string. To do that, we have pro players using spin effect patterns, and just takes a little tweaking sometime to find the right combination string for the racket. But the new burns and the new blade as well, both are, let's say, the denser or more precision spin pattern, which solves a lot of those problems with a little bit greater string breakage. I know a lot of players that if they break a string, they think it's the most exciting day of their life because they don't break strings that often. And the truth is most players don't restring their rackets as often as they should anyways, so it's not such a terrible thing that they occasionally break a string.
Sorry, I'm having connection issues with you, so I'm trying something new with my internet connection. I apologize to my listeners who are hearing all sorts of crunching right this minute, but I'm trying to plug a hard line in here and see if that helps. I don't know. That's weird. Okay. Well, thank you for that information. I think
I can help you with any racket questions, but I'm not sure I can fix your internet connection.
No, that's better. It's definitely my internet connection. I was on Wi-Fi, and now I've just plugged into a hard line, and it seems to be a little bit better. So,
Perfect.
I apologize for that. All right. So again, let me just give out the phone number in case people are listening and want to call in. That's 714-583-6853. And John Lyons from Wilson Tennis is on the air with us today, and more than happy to answer any racket questions you may have. And the guy knows his stuff, so please take advantage of having this resource with us on the air today. So you talked about the Burn series, and y'all do have some Wilson professional players using the Burn racket, even though you're billing it as, for baseliners. I mean, there are pros that fit that description. So who on the tour is currently playing with the Burn?
I think probably the player that most people know now who's pretty hot is Kei Nishikori. Out of Japan. We have a number of other players who are also in the Burn. Simona Halep is one of them. The idea that someone is a baseline or an attacker, or the third segment we call an all-quarter, which is someone who plays from the front of the court and the back of the court, this isn't some absolute, you can only buy this racket if you play this style. It's really just about trying to help the consumer understand which rackets to try first that might fit what they perceive their style of play to be. It doesn't mean that if you play an attacking style of tennis that you can't play with a Burn racket, or that if you play from the baseline you can't play with a Pro Staff racket. It's just it's more of a guideline. It's a way to organize it. It actually helps us to think about making the best product for a certain type of consumer, but it's not an absolute. So we have pro players and let's just say college and junior players who may play one style of play, but they like a different racket. In the end, that's what it's really about. It's about finding something that feels comfortable for you and that works for you, because you have to have confidence in your racket. You have to feel comfortable with it. It's got to feel, like an extension of your hand. It's sort of your trusted weapon, if you will, and if you don't feel comfortable with it, it doesn't matter what the racket manufacturers say. It's got to be something that works for you and is comfortable for you.
So you mentioned when you were discussing the various rackets in the Burn family that for a junior, as they grow and get stronger, that they could move up from starting with the ultralight, up to the 300-gram racket. What should we look for as parents to determine when a child is ready to make that move?
Sure, that's a really good question. I think that, well, first and foremost, your coach is the first person that you should be consulting with. So, I think it's really important that the coach who's on the court with your son or daughter is the first resource that you should go to. If they're qualified and a good coach, they're going to know when the player is ready to go up a little bit in weight. We do find sometimes players start with a very light racket and stay with it for a long time, and you really want to have as much mass in the racket as you can and you're comfortable with. The lighter a racket is, there's an impact between the racket and the ball, and a lightweight racket is gonna, can get pushed around a little bit more by the ball than a heavier weight racket. It's a collision between two objects. So if you have a little bit more mass in your racket, that's going to make the racket more stable when you hit off center, and that's important. That's important for the consistency of your shots, and it's also important to help reduce injuries. And to allow the players to not have to overswing. You should let the racket do some of the work. So, people ask me all the time, well, what's the age at which the kids should switch? Is it 10? Is it 12? Is it 14? And unfortunately, it really depends on the child's size and their progression as a player and their physical strength and when they're ready. The beauty of keeping, going 260, 280, 300 in the same racket is it's a very natural and comfortable progression for the player because the racket feels the same in their hands. It's the same shape, same head size. It feels in their hand like the same racket, so it's a very easy adjustment for the player, I think, when they just are in the same frame and move up in weight. And
can you compare the ultralight with, let's say, a smaller 10 and under racket, and how a player would maybe transition from those smaller rackets with the foam balls and a small court into a full-size racket? Would that ultralight zone be a great transition racket for them?
It would be if they're ready for a full-length racket, a 27-inch length racket. We also actually make 2 performance junior rackets that are in the Byrne family. They're the same shape and head size and so forth. We make a 26-inch and a 25-inch junior version of the racket. So when you start talking under 10, it's possible that the child perhaps should be in one of those rackets because it's physically shorter. As they progress, they may find that they're ready for a, quote-unquote adult length, full-length racket as well. The other thing that all these rackets have built into them, including the 26-inch junior but not the 25, is these are compatible with a new digital sensor technology that is from Sony. And on the new Byrnes, as well as our other rackets, you can pop off the end of the racket and you can snap in this little orange round piece that's a sensor that senses your racket swing and can tell you your racket speed, the ball speed, spin that you're generating. It can map out where you're hitting on center or off center on the racket. So you can get a lot of information for that as well. And these rackets are all compatible with that system, including the 26-inch junior racket. The only reason the 25-inch doesn't have it is that it requires a specific butt cap, which is the end piece on the racket that's a little bit flared, and it won't quite fit on that size handle because the 25-inch is a smaller handle. But, for a player that's under 10, it's really probably about length. Are they ready for a full-length racket, or do they need the shorter junior racket? Any of these rackets are fine with the foam, the stage 1, 2, 3 balls as the players progress. I don't think the player's going to have any problem with that at all.
Okay. talk to me a little more about this sensor. This is new for me. So it sounds kind of cool. Is there do you go with an iPhone app, or how does that work?
Sure. Yep. Well, the sensor itself hasn't delivered yet, so I have to say that first and foremost. We haven't actually shipped it yet, but the rackets are already compatible to accept it. There are other brands. One brand that's already put a sensor in the racket, which is kind of a cool system. But the beauty of this is that it can be added to the racket. And you could have mom and the daughter, or two kids that could take turns using it, so it can be interchanged between rackets. And all of our rackets now that we're selling, even the ones we're selling now, are already built to accept this sensor. There's an app that is that's for either Android or will be either for Android or iOS. It's by Sony. We partnered with in developing this device, and the app measures, as I said, all kinds of things about your swing and the length of your play and all kinds of data. But the thing that I think is really cool with this app is that you can use the camera on your phone or your tablet, so a coach can be videotaping a player, let's say your junior player, hitting balls, and the video then syncs to the data that the sensor is collecting. So let's just say I'm hitting forehands and backhands, and I'm trying to get a little bit more speed on the ball, a little more racket head speed. Well, the sensor is measuring my racket head speed, and it's measuring the ball impact on my strings, and it's sort of calculating what the ball speed would be. It's pretty accurate. We've tested it. And I can then go back and look at the video with my coach, and my coach can watch my forehands and say, you know what, look, here are the numbers coming up with each hit. And look, on the third hit, you got a little bit more ball speed, a little more racket head speed. Let's look in the video and see what you did differently. Oh, look, you bent your knees a little bit more. You rotated your torso more. So it's a terrific, including video with this is a terrific teaching aid, a coaching aid that coaches and parents can use with their kids. And the other thing that's cool about the video is it's instantly editing. So the sensor can tell if you're hitting a forehand or backhand. So if you've hit 20 shots and you just want to look at topspin backhands, you can just choose topspin backhands in the app, and it almost instantly edits the video to just include those shots. Since the sensor knows when you first set it up, it knows whether you're right or left-handed, and therefore it can tell whether you're hitting a forehand or backhand. And because it's measuring the racket's path through the air, it can tell whether you're hitting topspin, slice, or flat. So this is sort of the Internet of Things. The sensors are going into all of our, all around us, into our homes and into our sports equipment and into our cars and into our wristwatches. And we've been playing with prototypes with it for a long time, and it's been really fun, and it will be out on the market in the next couple of months. I'm not sure I have the exact delivery date, but it's in the next couple of months you'll be able to buy the sensor. But the rackets are already compatible. You just pop off. There's a little W on the end of the racket, and the sensor package comes with a little tool that just pops that W off, and then the sensor just essentially snaps into the bottom of the racket.
That's so cool. I had no idea y'all were working on that technology, and that's something I would be very, very interested to play with and take a look at. I'm wondering, are you guys going to do some training for coaches to help them understand how best to use the new technology?
Actually, not as we speak, but right now, we're in the middle of doing a 10-city tour in the U.S. in which we are going out and meeting with coaches and our Wilson authorized dealers in those cities or in those areas during the day, and we're training them on certainly the new rackets that are just showing up in stores now, so that we can make sure that everybody's well informed and really knows what they're doing to help the consumers. But we're also showing them this sensor and how it works, and how it how the app works and so forth. So we're actually sort of training coaches and dealers on it right now in a number of cities across the U.S. We are trying at these events actually to also put aside some time for consumers. So if you go onto our Facebook site, you'll find it's the Burn in the USA Tour, they're calling it. We've done a couple of events already in California and in Texas. So we've done the first 3 or 4 events, but I know we have 6 or 7 more coming up. And you can find that information either on our Facebook page or it'll be on wilson.com. You might have to dig in a couple of clips into tennis to find it. But we're going to be out there training coaches on how to use this tool and training our dealers on it in the next 3-4 weeks.
Awesome. Well, I will actually go grab the link to that and post it on Parenting Aces as well. So listeners, take a look later today, and I'll have that up. I hope y'all are coming to Atlanta. If you are, I will definitely be there. And
we are, of course, coming to Atlanta. You couldn't do that tour without going to Atlanta. I personally will unfortunately not be at the Atlanta event, but there will be some of our best people will be there to help dealers, coaches, and consumers. And I know we would love to have any of your listeners and you from the Atlanta area who want to join us that day and try out the new equipment and try out the sensor and the app that goes with it and see some of their information. We also have another system that we use as well called a TrackMan. This is a little bit more, a little bit bigger. You can't buy one yourself. It uses Doppler radar to measure the ball. So the other thing that we bring to these events is they usually have one court set up with this TrackMan system, and this very accurately measures your ball speed, ball spin, height over the net, ball placement, the path, and this is the system that we used when we developed the Spin Effect rackets a few years back, and we still use that system in a lot of our testing. And when we're out and doing some of these demo events, when we can, we like to have that on court as well because it gives you some great information about your shots also.
I actually got to use that technology at your event at the U.S. Open 2 years ago when y'all were introducing the spin technology, and it was really
very
cool.
Early in the morning, as I recall.
Yes, it was, but it was a very, very cool event, and what I took away from it, because I tried a couple different rackets, it showed me, it compared my shots with the various rackets, and so it helped me decide which one of the new rackets that I wanted to play with for my style of play, and that was very cool technology.
Yeah, it's not really a consumer-centric system because it's a very expensive piece of technology. If you've ever watched if you watch golf on TV and you see the path of the golf ball, they'll do this graphic that shows the distance and the spin and the arc of the ball. That's the system that we're talking about. We have one of the. It was originally developed. It was originally developed to track missiles. But the company that developed it out of Europe realized that there weren't that many clients who were going to buy it for missile tracking. So they began using it to – they were golfers, unfortunately not tennis players, and they began adapting the system to track golf balls. And since we're in the golf business as well, when we were developing the spin rackets, we needed a way to quickly and easily be able to measure the ball spin because our original testing was done with high-speed video and someone – literally has to sit there and count the ball rotations, and there's some computer software that tries to do it, but it's not as accurate. So we were trying to find a solution to how we can to produce a racket that gives you more spin. We had to find a way to measure spin quickly and easily, and we were trying to figure out some way that this could be done. And there were our golf engineers sitting right there saying, well, we could probably adapt this thing we're already using for golf. And see if we could get it to measure the movement of a tennis ball. It did involve 2 years of rewriting software and testing and so forth with the company that makes the system. But if you are ever at an event where we have one of these things, it is pretty. You're right. It interesting because you can take out racket 1, racket 2, hit 10 balls with each, and you can see exactly what your ball speed and your spin rate and height over the net, and it maps where each ball lands. So we can actually use it to measure accuracy as well. We can put a target on the court, and then you can hit 10 balls with racket number 1 and 10 with racket number 2, and you can see where it lands. So how many of them are closest to the target. The sensors built into the rackets or attachable to the rackets, like our new Sony system, are a lot more consumer-centric, easy to use, to get the information off of an app. And of course, there's with everything, there's a social component to the sensor app as well, where you can compare your results to your friends and so forth. So we're excited about the Sony system as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna go check those dates as soon as we get off the air and make sure I put your Atlanta date on my calendar. So let's switch gears and talk about the new Blade rackets too, because while I have been playing with the Burn, my son has been playing with the Blade and loves that and loves the new Blade. So talk to us about the differences between those two families of rackets and what we can expect from them.
So the Blade, whereas the Burn is a completely new racket, the Blade family of rackets has been around for a while. It's actually one of our most popular. Actually, it is our most popular racket on tour. We have more players on tour using Blades than any other racket. Serena Williams and Venus Williams, both are Blade players. Milos Raonic, who is kind of the up-and-coming Canadian player who's knocking on the door of the top 10, or maybe he's in the top 10 by now, is a Blade player. And we have a lot of players on the Pro Tour coming up, a lot of college players and juniors using the Blade. The main difference between the Blade and the Burn is power level. The Blade is not built to give you the same easy power that a racket like the Burn is. And that might sound like a disadvantage, but why wouldn't I want a racket with more power? But that makes the racket a little bit easier to control. It's a great racket for attacking players who take a little bigger swing at the ball. They're trying to step in, take the ball on the rise. Generally, they've got a faster racket head speed, so they don't need the racket to do as much of the work. They're looking for a racket that's controllable, that lets them generate spin, lets them swing freely, be confident that they're going to be able to put the ball where they want. So it's a little bit more control-oriented racket. The Blade, as I said, has been out for a while. We've gone through multiple generations of this racket. The previous version, most people say to me the previous version was the black and silver version. The previous version was terrific, but we wanted to update the Blade to make it easier for a wider group of players to play with. Because the Blade was getting really popular with people trying it and saying, I wish it was just a little easier for me to play with. And so we made some changes to the construction of the racket, the way the materials are used in the racket. If you want, I can get really techy and tell you what changed on the inside of the racket. So we use a material called basalt. Basalt is volcanic rock that is melted and turned into a fiber. And the advantage of basalt, we've been using it for a while, and the racket's mostly carbon fiber, but we've been using basalt for a while. If you or our listeners remember our BLX family of rackets, BLX, the BL in BLX stood for basalt. And so it's a natural vibration dampening material, and we weren't using it to try to make the racket feel more comfortable or cushioned. What we were trying to do is filter out some of the harsher vibrations. It wasn't really a comfort technology. It was more of a feel, But when we ask players, what do you want in a racket, the number one thing that players say is feel, which in all of our surveys, and it's been that way for a long time, they say, I want feel, although it's very hard for the player to define what feel is. It's easy for us to measure power. It's easy for us to measure. We can actually measure control. We can measure a lot of things about the racket, but feel is pretty subjective, and it's really player by player. So what using basalt in the rackets previously allowed us to do was to filter out some of the frequencies of vibration in the rackets that players felt a little harsh to them. So the frame just felt more solid. We don't want to filter out all the vibration, because that vibration is feel. You want to sense the ball on your strings. With the new blade, with the old blade, we've been using a little bit of basalt in the racket, but with the new blade, we did something completely different. We braided carbon fiber and basalt together. It looks like a sock, basically, of material. Half of the material was carbon fiber, half of it was basalt, and this braided construction is something we also use on our Pro Staff rackets. We've used on Pro Staffs for a long time. So we actually changed the way that we make the blade, and we used a braided mix of carbon fiber and basalt in the racket. And what we found was that this really made the racket a little more reactive. And by that I mean players perceived the racket to be a little livelier, but it still had that solid feel. And it just seemed to be more forgiving for more players. The other thing that we did when we changed the construction is we drilled the holes a little bit differently in the racket. Normally the holes are drilled 90 degrees to the frame, and we used something that we've done on a couple other rackets, which we call parallel drilling, in which we drill the holes in the direction that the strings go through the frame, not 90 degrees to the frame. And what parallel drilling does is it gives us a bigger sweet spot. It allows the string bed to be a little bit more reactive as well to the ball, and generally produces a softer, more comfortable feel in the string bed. So combining this new layup of braided graphite and basalt with this different way that we drilled the holes, what players are finding is that it's just an easier racket to play with, especially on the off-center hits. A racket like the blade that's not that powerful, when you hit up high off the face or hit on the side of the, near the frame, can be a little bit tough to play with. You lose, normally in that kind of frame, you lose a lot of power up off near the tip of the racket. But the sweet spot is much bigger on the racket now with these two changes. And what that's done, we've kept the power level the same, but it's just an easier racket for more people to play with. People find it to be a little bit more comfortable. And players that perhaps couldn't play the blade in the last generation are finding now the blade works great for them.
And you do have different string patterns in the blade as well, right?
We do, yeah. We make the Blade 98. It's the main head size that we're making a couple of head sizes. The Williams sisters both use a 104 that we make. So we make an oversized version, and it's borderline oversized. But our biggest seller is the 98 head size, and in that 98 head size, we actually do 3 string patterns. We do going from so we do a Blade 98S, and that is the 18 by 16 string pattern, which gives you a little bit more spin, but not with the string breakage problems. And that is actually our hottest seller because you get all the benefits, of getting a little bit more spin with this racket. The spin effect pattern also makes the racket a little bit livelier. The ball comes off the string bed a little faster and does enhance the sweet spot a little bit. So there's tons of benefits to the spin effect patterns. So there's an 18 by 16 spin effect version that weighs 294 grams. And then there are 2 versions that are not spin effect. One is 16 by 19, which is sort of the more open, pattern that people use now. And one that is 18 mains and 20 crosses. Those are both 304, so those are about 10 grams heavier than the S version. And the difference really is some players prefer the denser pattern, the 18 by 20. It definitely isn't going to give you more power. But for some players who hit really hard and want to enhance the control aspect of the racket, they're going to like the 18-20. I would say most players would be more comfortable in the 16-19, and that's our better seller. Historically, there were more rackets with denser patterns like 18 by 20, 18 by 19 patterns, and the market's sort of shifted towards 16 main, 16 by 18, 16 by 19 patterns because they're just easier to play with, a little bit more forgiving.
Gotcha.
So there are 3 versions, and the difference is string pattern, but also there's a difference in weight. And then the second version is a 104, which is the racket that Serena and Venus both use. Venus back up to number 11 in the world, amazingly. And that racket's actually also a half-inch longer.
Okay. All right. And what does that extra half-inch do? I mean, what's the advantage of that?
It gives you a little bit more reach, a little bit more leverage. If you can hit the ball a little further away from your body, that can increase your power. For a while, a lot of the manufacturers were making longer rackets. Now that's come back to where, 27 inches is the normal length for a racket, and we make a few that are 27 and a quarter or 27 and a half. It just gives you a little bit more reach and a little bit more leverage hitting the ball.
Okay, got it. So I was watching the Australian Open. You guys sent me an announcement of these new rackets during the tournament, so it was really fun to kind of watch the players and try and figure out who was playing with what and, look at their style of play. And believe me, I am very amateurish when it comes to looking at that stuff, but it was a fun challenge anyway. But one thing I noticed was Grigor Dimitrov was playing with an all-black Wilson racket, and we couldn't, for the life of us, figure out what the heck it was. Is he testing out something new, or what's going on with him?
He's play testing a prototype racket right now. Actually, we have a number of players who are play testing prototypes. Juan Martín del Potro was unfortunately not. He played the warm-up tournament and was unfortunately not able to play the Australian Open itself. And he's also playing prototype rackets. So when the players are trying something that we don't have on the market yet, we just paint it black, and we get asked for those black rackets all the time. People think they look cool, but it just means it's a prototype racket, something that we're working with the player on developing something, that might not be currently in our line, and that's part of a process. We use our touring pros to test equipment. We use our junior players who are sponsored junior players to test equipment. We use coaches from our coaching network, Wilson Advisory staff. That's sort of a requirement of being a sponsored coach or a sponsored player with Wilson, that you're part of our advisory staff. And when we need people to play test new rackets or strings or grips or other stuff that we're developing, it's really important for us to get consumer feedback, and not just the top pros, but average players too. So we do a lot of on-court testing of prototype rackets as they're in development. I can tell you the racket that Grigor was playing is actually not anything that we currently make.
So, I mean, for a player to agree to use a prototype during the Australian Open, for example, they must have a lot of confidence in that racket, because there's a lot on the line at a tournament like that.
Well, the biggest play test, the most public play test in history occurred last year when Roger Federer was playing a blacked out racket for most of the year, and he went through. We went through numerous versions of what became the new pro staff with him. We manufactured. I'd have to look the exact number, but something like 132 different sample rackets. He didn't hit every one of them, but he personally tried many different versions. We were playing around with the construction and the weight and the balance and the string pattern and the materials that we were using. And, sometimes a player will hit 10 balls with a racket and say, no, I'm not getting enough power with it, or it's buzzing a little off center hits, or I'm not getting the same feel. We'll try to get some feedback, and we go and make another prototype. So we do most of the prototyping in our R&D center in Chicago, which we call our Innovation Center. So we actually can manufacture prototype rackets there in our facility, which not too many of the racket brands are still doing that. So it's an advantage for us that our engineers can take that feedback, and 10 days later we've got another prototype to go out and play test.
That's very cool. It's funny because when I got the new Burn, I told my son, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'll use it in our mixed match this weekend. It'll be great. And he's like, well, Mom, don't you want to hit with it before our match and make sure you like it? And I said, for me, it makes no difference. I'm just not sophisticated enough to be able to tell. If I can make contact with the ball, I'm doing great. But obviously, y'all are getting very detailed feedback from these pros and others that are playtesting rackets. What type of information are you looking for? And I'm asking because this fascinates me. I think it's such a cool aspect of the industry that we don't normally have access to. So I'm going to pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah, there's two parts to this. One is it's a good segue into how any player should pick a racket. And the number one thing, it's easy, it's not hard to do, is you got to try it. So when someone's in the market for a new racket, we have people play testing rackets and giving us feedback on what they like or don't like about a prototype as part of the development process, which is usually a couple of years long before a racket gets to market. But that's not that dissimilar from the process that a player who's looking to try out and find a new racket. So certainly, you go into a good tennis shop and you've got someone or your coach who hopefully knows your game, but asks you the right questions and tries to find out probably what you're playing with now and what you're looking for. Do you want a racket that will give you a little more power? Do you need more control? Are you looking for more comfort? Do you just want something that that looks better and you're just ready to try something different? So that demoing process of trying the racket is the same process, whether we're using it to develop a racket or whether you're using it to find your new racket. And it is the easiest and the best way for players to find the right racket for them is to just try it out and demo it and see if it feels comfortable and if it works for you. And if you take a couple demos out or a demo out from your local tennis shop, the best thing you can try to do, if you can do it while you're playing, is even bring a little pad of paper, make a couple of notes if you can, so you have a little bit of feedback to give to the person in the shop. So the girl who's in the shop who's helping you, who knows all the different products, and we try to get out and educate, and the other brands try to get out and educate. You go back to her and you say, well, I liked it, but I didn't feel like I was getting enough depth in the court. Or I liked it, but at the net I was struggling with my ball. I just felt like the ball was, pushing the racket around. Or I loved it, but it was a little hard to control. Well, any of that kind of feedback can help someone who knows what they're talking about in rackets, can help them say to you, well, okay, that's great. So from that feedback, here's the next one that you should try. When you find the right one, you'll know it, and it'll feel comfortable pretty quickly. And that's just part of the process of finding the right racket. What we are doing when we're developing product is not that dissimilar. We start by trying to think about who the product is for, what type of player, what are their needs, how often do they play. We think a lot about how they swing. Do they have a faster racket head speed, a longer swing with a fast racket head speed, or even now with the way strokes are changing, it can be a short swing with a fast racket head speed. Or is it a more compact stroke? So we don't want to generalize, but we try to look for trends in the way that people play and think about what those players might need in a racket. One of the things that we did with the Burn, going back to the Burn racket, was we definitely were thinking a little bit more of the juniors, and one of the big trends is almost all the juniors are hitting two-handed backhands and tend to use a Western or semi-Western forehand grip because they're trying to hit more spin. And as we were watching juniors play and watching tour players hitting balls, one of the things that's really changed is the way players are hitting the two-handed backhand. And one of the big trends, if you watch carefully the pro players on TV, you'll see one of the big trends is 10 years ago when players did a two-handed backhand, their hands were right next to each other. The player's right and left hand, let's just say you're right-handed. Your left hand, which would be the top hand, was right next to your right hand on the handle. And what we're noticing now is that, a lot of the players are raising the left hand, the top hand, up, and there's a separation between the two hands. And that's because the two-handed backhand stroke is much more left-handed. Again, I'm talking about a right-handed player. It's much more left-handed dominant than it used to be. Players are driving through the ball more with their top arm, their left hand for a right-handed player. And to be able to get more leverage and be able to change the racket angle, players are separating their hands a little bit. So one of the things that we did with the Burn rackets is we made the actual handle longer. The racket's not longer, but the handle itself in the grip area extends further up into the shaft of the racket to give players who play with two hands a more comfortable grip on the racket, because most of those players who we think are the target consumers for this racket are hitting with two-handed backhands.
It's so funny that you say that, because before I played with the Burn the first time, I asked my son to put an overgrip on it for me, and he's like, Mom, these overgrips are too short. So now I can tell him it's not my overgrip. It's that the grip area is definitely longer.
Just use Wilson Pro overgrip, the white overgrip. It'll definitely reach.
Okay.
But the handle is actually longer. And again, it's not that the racket's longer. We just made the handle go up higher. We call it an X2 shaft, X2 like two hands. And actually, we changed the shape of the shaft of the racket, the part that you hold with your left hand when you're not in a two-handed backhand, and we rounded it a little bit and narrowed it in a little. And I know this seems like such a silly little thing, but as we were having players try different rackets in their hands, and so the game has gotten really, really fast. Speed is a big part of the game now. The ball's moving fast, players are moving fast, and players are playing from the baseline, and they're changing from a Western grip on their right hand, so they have to rotate their racket or their hand way around to one side of the handle, and then the next shot they're hitting a two-handed backhand, and they've got to move their left hand down, rotate their right hand far around the handle. So the grip changes have to be quicker now. So it's not just that we made the handle longer, we experimented with different shapes of the shaft. Now that we don't do with a real racket, that we do with a 3D model. We print, this whole 3D printing thing that everyone's talking about. We have a huge 3D printer, and so we print out basically models of rackets, but we have players in our R&D center mimicking quick grip changes and giving us feedback. This feels more comfortable in my hand. This feels like I can change my grip quicker. So we actually tried to design the shaft of the racket to make it easy to change your grips and to find your two-handed backhand really quickly, because we think that that's the style of play that the target consumer is playing. So it sort of starts off with just trying to understand who the consumer is. It's not a radical concept. You should try to understand who you're building it for. And the development process for a new racket that we bring to market takes about 2 years. So we're working on things now that you'll see in the market in 2017, because it takes a while to get them right.
Very cool. Well, we're coming down to our last minute and a half or so I want to make sure that I'm giving you the opportunity to tell us everything we need to know. So, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with us in this last minute or so?
No, well, we've got some terrific new products. We really like the playability of the new Burn and the new Blade as well. We just updated our Pro Staff about 6 months ago, so we've got a bunch of new rackets that we think are the best playing rackets, and actually I think are the best looking rackets we've had in a while too. And I just would encourage any of your listeners to get out to a tennis club, grab a demo, try out the racket, maybe think a little bit about your style of play and think about whether you think you're a baseline player, whether you are an attacker that likes to take the ball early and work your way into the net, or whether you're an all-court player. We didn't talk about our other rackets, but we make rackets for all-court players as well. and think about what your style of play is, and grab a demo in one of our new rackets and give it a try. And we hope that you enjoy it, and give us your feedback on our Facebook page, or you can find ways to contact us through our website or through various different social media, Twitter and Facebook and so forth. So we really like hearing from our consumers what they like and what they don't like, and it helps us to make better products for them.
Great. Well, John, thank you so much. I know this is kind of tricky with you being in Germany right now, but I appreciate you carving out an hour for us and sharing your knowledge with us, and it was fascinating. I'm now plotting how I'm going to get to Chicago and kind of sneak my way into that R&D center. That sounds really fun.
We'd love to have you visit. It's like Toyland for tennis players, so we'd love to have you visit sometime and
awesome.
show you a little behind the scenes.
That'd be fun. Well, thanks again for being with us. To my listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. The show will be on ParentingAces.com later this afternoon, and I look forward to playing with my new racket. I know my son's enjoying his, and John, we'll have you back the next time Wilson launches a new line.
Perfect. Thanks
so much
for having me on.
Have a great week, everybody. See you on the court.